So you're having these gallbladder attacks and you're like, oh wow, this is the worst pain that is available to humankind. I really don't like this. So you go to the hospital and they take your gallbladder out because that pain is not something anybody wants to sign up for. And then after the surgery you notice, oh wow, I'm still having that same pain. I'm still having those gallbladder attacks even though my gallbladder was removed. That really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So in this video, I'm going to help you understand some possibilities that may be going on, and I'm also going to give you some steps of things that you can investigate or steps that you might be able to take to create some improvement. Let's get at it.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Now, we know I'm not a doctor, but I'm certainly not a surgeon either. So don't view anything that I say here as a replacement for seeking medical help. If you're having pain, pain is a sign that things are not going great, that things are going wrong, and that you need to correct that issue. So don't let anything that I say here stop you from seeking help if you're having a painful situation. But I do hear from a lot of people who tell me that, oh, I had my gallbladder removed and now I'm still getting gallbladder attack like pain. And some of these folks are told that, well, it's kind of probably just in your head. And it's like, I really don't feel like that's a type of pain that somebody could just make up. I made it up in my head. I'm going to make up pain in your head. So when we're looking at this issue, most people are told that, oh, you have post-cholecystectomy syndrome. And it kind of annoys me a little bit sometimes that they can just put syndrome at the end of some fancy words when they don't really understand what's going on. And they can just, you got a syndrome, you're syndroming too much. I don't know. But this usually represents some issues that are going on after the gallbladder surgery. So this translates into after gallbladder removal surgery, a bunch of stuff's going on that we don't understand. And usually the person is having pain, and I've actually heard from a number of doctors who have told me that, well, sometimes there's a secondary issue that's creating pain. So maybe there was another issue and this gallbladder was creating pain, and so they removed the gallbladder, but there's still something else there creating pain. I've also had doctors tell me that sometimes the gallbladder removal was the wrong cause, and that doesn't mean that the doctor's a horrible person. Somebody's having horrible pain, they're screaming in your office, and you go in and you see, oh, there's a bunch of stones in here, so that's probably what's doing. Let's remove that. But doctors say sometimes it was something else that was creating that pain, so that is a possibility. Other things that we want to think about beyond that secondary cause and maybe the wrong cause thing is that maybe the pain is coming from something else. Maybe it's pancreatitis type situation. Maybe it's gastritis where there's a lot of inflammation in the stomach that has the ability to create pain, especially if a person has ulcer type situations. You'll hear a lot about maybe it's acid reflux, and I feel like acid reflux is different than a gallbladder type pain, but that's what we hear about. But this hypochlorhydria, which is basically just a lack of stomach acid, somebody not making enough stomach acid, which is very common, that seems to have the ability to drive a few of these different issues. And it seems that it has the ability to be common with someone who has had their gallbladder removed. So usually the liver will make this bile stuff that comes down here and it's stored in the gallbladder. And the gallbladder's job is to store that bile and then concentrate the bile until the body is ready to use the bile. Now the bile is this soapy substance that's used to help us digest our food correctly. It helps us emulsify or break down our dietary fats so that we can use those fats and so that we can assimilate fat-soluble vitamins. So it's very important in that regard. But it's called on, the gallbladder squeezes it down here into this biliary pathway, down into here what's called the duodenum. Some people say duodenum, I like to say duodenum. So it squeezes it down here in the duodenum, and it does that after the food has been acidified and leaves the stomach. So as it's leaving the stomach, that's what triggers the gallbladder to squeeze it down here, and then the bile comes down and it neutralizes those acids, and then those acids leaving the stomach, meeting an alkaline bile product, those opposite pHs can create this sizzle that really helps us bust the food apart and pull all the nutrients out of that food. The problem is there's a lot of things in our world today that can cause that bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, and then it's not flowing out like it should, and it stays in the gallbladder and continues to concentrate until it concentrates into stones. And then the person's bile is not moving, and a stone might block a duct, and they get a gallbladder attack, and then they yank the gallbladder out. So that's kind of a story that's common, and sometimes this can happen because the person's not making enough stomach acid. So if there's not enough stomach acid, then that might not call on enough bile to come down. So it's the stomach acid that can trigger that bile sometimes. And so if that bile isn't coming down, it'll stay there and get concentrated. So it's possible that that could be caused by this lack of stomach acid. And this lack of stomach acid can create these other issues like acid reflux and gastritis, and can contribute to some of these other problems that may be going on while the person also had gallstones. So these are all possibilities, and you might have to investigate to figure out what may be going on here a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. But a more common thing that it seems to be an issue going on with people when they have these attacks after they've had their gallbladder removed is that they still have some type of stone or some type of blockage in this biliary pathway. It can be stuck in a duct somewhere, it can be stuck down here, there could be stones blocking things. And it's when these stones block the gallbladder or one of these ducts that you get that really painful attack. So a person will have their gallbladder removed, and we'll say see you later to that, but if this is still backed up and not flowing correctly, which is really common, then that can create that same type of pain. And if your bile flow was so poor that this continued to stay in the gallbladder and concentrate into stones, doesn't it make sense that the other areas where bile was moving might also be really sludgy or have stones there that are blocking things from moving correctly? So it's just a more likely scenario, especially if that pain is similar to what you were feeling when you felt like you were having a gallbladder attack. But if a person is having this problem, possible steps that they could take, and I can't tell you what you should do because you can see there's a variety of things that can create this situation. The steps are really about investigating what may be going on. So there are medical procedures that can be done that can, come up here in these and clear stones out or clear blockages out. They put like these things up and make balloons out. And there's a variety of procedures. I'll put some links in the description below for research that you can look into how this can be problematic when the ducts are still blocked even though the gallbladder is removed, and some procedures that can be done with that. Another step that can be helpful is to investigate your digestion a little bit. So when someone has this gallbladder removed, the liver should still be making bile and putting it through this biliary pathway here down in the duodenum to help us digest our food at least a little bit and to help us emulsify the fats that we're eating. And the liver puts toxins in that bile, and we want to have that flowing down so that those toxins can go out the back door. And so we want to make sure that that's flowing correctly. So I don't want to go into all that here, it's going to make the video too long, but we'll put links in the description below for our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow and our video on what causes gallbladder sludge. And you can go through those to get an idea of, am I showing signs of bile not really moving through the system correctly? Or are there things in my life that I know for sure have the ability to sludge up that bile? And then if that's the case, then that might increase the likelihood of some type of biliary blockage or stone in the biliary pathway or in those kind of situations. And you might want to push into investigating that a little bit further. And if you're not making enough stomach acid, that might be creating some of these other issues that we talked about before. So we have a totally free digestion course that'll walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion might not be working correctly, and if so, what steps you can take to improve those. And we'll put the link to that totally free course in the description below this video. So some steps that we hear from people taking that when they feel like they're having like a blockage situation, we like to see people take steps to thin that bile out so that that bile can flow a little bit easier. And there's also steps you can take to dilate that biliary pathway or open it up a little bit. And if there's a stone blocking it and you have the ability to dilate that a little bit, it could make it easier to move that through and past that stone. So again, if you're in an emergency, you need to get some medical help. But if you feel like, I'm not having pain now, maybe I should see if I can get this moving a little bit better if I feel like maybe it's not moving correctly, then you can jump over right now and check out our video on 5 ways to improve bile flow, and that'll show you how to thin that bile out and steps you can take to dilate that biliary pathway and get things moving a little bit better. Let us know how it goes.